So welcome to the GCV Titans Podcast, where we're interviewing corporate venture leaders who've really stood the test of time, leaders who've been at their units for more than 10 years and so therefore have seen the ups and downs of many market cycles, leadership changes, and the rest. And we're really diving in to see what are those elements that allow these units to really have that longevity, that sustained ability to be relevant to the organization. I'm delighted to be here with Philipp Rose, Bosch Ventures. Thank you very much for taking the time to join us.
Pleasure.
We're here on a really busy day at the GCV Symposium with a lot of meetings going on, but I've managed to steal a little bit of Philipp's time. And I really wanted to dig under the skin of how Bosch Ventures has evolved over the years. You joined the unit when it had already been functioning for some time,
Yes.
but it's probably fair to say it was still quite nascent. Those were the early days. So tell us a little bit about what the team was like at the time when you joined.
So I joined some 12 years ago, and we had already an international team with offices in the Valley and in Israel and in Germany. They had proper deal flow around the world. They did regular investments, but then it was at a stage where it wasn't really clear what the strategy is. The colleagues were a bit disappointed that we weren't really independent regarding the investments. There was a advisory board that worked rather like an investment committee. Plus, what we realized, there wasn't a strategy. It wasn't really clear what's the purpose of Bosch Ventures. So we ran an internal strategy process and really worked out what's our purpose, what's our raison d'etre, what do we actually want to achieve for Bosch. That was very helpful, getting everyone aligned, to also coordinate the strategy with the corporate, with the big group, with the board of management. From then on, it was a different journey, I would say.
So that was really a kind of first big pivot point for the unit.
Pivot is probably a bit too much, but the next step of development.
There had already been some investment activity, so there was a portfolio. How did you transition the existing portfolio? Did you bring in a slightly different criteria for what you were looking at?
No, all of that was set up very properly and aligned with the group. So we didn't have any changes in the search areas. We always did early stage investments, and we continued to do so. Regarding the investments and the portfolio, and so it was a steady further development.
So the big change was more the strategic alignment with the company.
Yes, exactly. We made sure that the advisory board really was only an advisory board, and that we were more and more acting as if we were an institutional investor, not as a corporate investor. But at the same time, what we also had a lot of discussion about was strategically for the Bosch Group, what is the purpose? Why are we there? And initially, nobody at Bosch knew what innovation came out of the VC industry. We then took it a step further and said, no, hang on, we need to make sure that all these innovative startups can also work together with Bosch. And we tried it various ways with sponsoring accelerator programs that didn't really work out. Then we came across BMW Startup Garage, and we listened to them. We got their insights and advice, and then set up something similar at Bosch. And since years now, we have our Open Bosch team, we call it, doing venture clienting.
What's the relationship then between the venture clienting unit and the investment side?
We have 3 dedicated heads within the Bosch Ventures team doing nothing else but venture clienting. They are coordinating all the activities. And then we have a loose network of venture managers, associates in the organization, but not reporting to us. They stay with their business unit. They just have a loose network, but regular exchange. And through that, we manage that more and more business units jumped on the bandwagon of doing venture clienting.
Do you sometimes invest also in the companies that you client
Yeah,
with?
but that's independent of each other. It can happen. And of course, when we invest, and we do investments 5 to 10 a year, when we invest, we of course try to bring the portfolio companies together with Bosch as well, make them big and support Bosch. But it's not a necessary precondition.
Do you find that you're looking at quite different things? Because often what I hear described as venture clienting is obviously great for things that are solving immediate business problems because you want something that can be deployed. When you're looking at venture capital, you can invest a little bit ahead of the company. Have you maintained that sort of division?
Indeed, when the Open Bosch team gets the problems to be solved from the business unit. They just look where's the startup that potentially can solve that. And then it's independent how early stage they are.
So it sounds like you hit upon, after some experimentation with a kind of toolkit that was really answering what the corporate needed. But how have things evolved over the years, in, say, 12 years since you joined? Have you seen other areas where you had to tweak the model a little bit or adjust?
First of all, we grew. After a couple of years, we opened an office in China, had a team on site because we saw that Chinese startups are more and more relevant. We later on also opened an office in Boston and have a team there because covering the East Coast from the West Coast doesn't make a lot of sense either. And very recently, just a couple of weeks ago, we actually hired our first UK associate. So we are now on site here in London as well. So that was the regional expansion kind of over 12 years. And then in China, once we had the team on site, we realized that there's so much potential and there's so much willingness also from other third-party investors to give us their money in order for us to invest their money, which we didn't expect. We ended up raising an external fund in China, which is unique for Bosch Ventures, and we are currently fundraising the second one. And of course, this gives us far more firepower in terms of investments in China.
So remind me of what your structure is for the funds overall. Are they GPLP structure?
No. In the classic scenario, it's off balance sheet, Bosch money, but we treat it as if it was a fund for performance purposes.
Now, one thing that people tell me is that one key to surviving for a long time as a corporate VC is that you need to have some successes, preferably as early as possible. Are there things that you look back on as being some of your early highlights where the unit really managed to prove itself?
Yeah, of course. If we weren't successful, we probably would have closed down years ago. Every 3 years, plus minus, we have to apply at the Bosch Board of Management for the next virtual fund. So far, knock on wood, that always went well. And so they're pretty happy. And what really helps in that regard is that we now, with this open Bosch activity and the venture clienting, we really can show impact. We can show we have many projects where the collaboration with the startup either leads to savings for Bosch or for new developments that are much faster. So this advantage, this impact definitely helps in continuing our activities.
Obviously, all corporate investors have to be both strategic and financial, but I'm just wondering, how do you on a practical level balance the needs of those two?
Yeah. Definitely the strategic aspect is more important. We do this predominantly in order to facilitate Bosch to be more innovative, even by partnering with startups. On the financial side, the good thing is that we have a very clear incentive system, including carry. And so it's anyway clear that we all want to be successful on the financial side because then we get a carry.
So to bring us to the present day, what are you excited about now? You're obviously constantly expanding your footprint, but what about sectors? What industries are catching your eye?
Anything that can be of relevance at some point in time for Bosch is of interest for us. That hasn't changed too much over the years. Of course, AI is predominant now, is much more important than it was 10 years ago. But we did already AI investments 10 years ago. Robotics, automation, electrification, energy efficiency, to some extent health tech where sensors can be applied. That's all things that we look at. Or innovations where business life can be made easier, faster, less energy intense, less costly.
Actually, with an organization as broad as Bosch, could really potentially look at anything. So is the problem actually more focusing down on things? How do you choose what's relevant?
Choosing where to invest, that's the beauty as well as the difficulty in our business, but that makes the whole fun.
So is that more of an art than a science then?
You could say that, yes, probably, yes.
So how are you playing the AI game at the moment? You made investments ahead of the curve, for which I congratulate you, but obviously now the hype is catching up with everyone.
Absolutely. We see indeed crazy valuations, and we need to be very cautious there and don't follow the herd in every aspect. But we have very controversial discussions within our team, indeed. So it's not always easy.
We've been talking a lot this morning about where Europe's strengths are. Do you have a view on what do you think is exciting about European technology at the moment?
There's a lot in the semiconductor industry, including photonics, and there's a lot in quantum computing. but also green tech.
A final question, which is, if you were to go back in time and you were able to tell your 12 years ago self how to make this journey easier, what would your advice be?
Easier. The key thing is to have a purpose, really to know what is your purpose. And if you go out there and look at corporate VCs, they can be from very strategic all the way to almost being a family office, very independent and totally financially focused. And every model is the right thing for that group, but they need to be aware, what is the purpose? Why do we have this model? And then it's good. If you don't know your purpose, then you run the risk that with the next CEO, you have to close.
Have you always found it easy to explain the purpose when you've had changeover at the top level?
We have the advantage that the Bosch Group with 140 years had only 7 CEOs so far.
So you're blessed with a little bit more continuity than maybe other people see. But I feel like it's a lesson that can be taken into other groups where maybe they're seeing a changeover at the top every couple of years. Well, thank you very much, Philipp, for your time and the insights